Hello, my name is Shanice Matthews, and I worked alongside Jamie Corns and Dr. Latasha Oliver for our Yellow Belt project entitled Discharge Milestones. Our project took place on 3 North, our mother baby unit. As a team, we reviewed our discharge times for the fourth quarter of 2020. We recognized excessive delays that impeded our workflow. Our team members included our project champion, Jenny Van Ravenstein, our process owner, Jamie Corns, our team lead, myself, our members, Dr. Latasha Oliver, who was our educator for labor and delivery, our OE residents, Stacy Bigner, Michelle Silva, Anne-Marie Gersner, and Madison Pumphrey, as well as our nurse practitioners, pediatric residents, 3 North staff, lactation, and case management. After reviewing the discharge times for the fourth quarter of 2020, we recognized that the average time took about 4 hours and 45 minutes from the time that the order was placed until the patient physically left the unit. This led to dissatisfaction amongst providers, impeded our workflow, and ultimately led to patient dissatisfaction. Our goal statement is as follows. The goal of this project is to decrease discharge times on the mother-baby unit from 4 hours and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 30 minutes or less by July 31st of 2021. Our charter included our problem statement, our team composition, our goals, scope, and timeline. The business rationale was to reduce the length of stay, improve customer satisfaction, and reduce unit production time. We worked alongside Timothy Pollard to achieve this. A review of our current process of discharge for moms was conducted, and this flowchart was created. Discharge orders were being placed by our OB team between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. The oncoming nurse must then perform a physical assessment, provide medications, and document according to policy. A medication reconciliation must also be verified, as well as missed beds program if the patient qualifies. Discharge instructions must then be printed. The patient must then be educated on those discharge instructions, as well as be provided with any educational material related to their medical diagnosis. The nurse then answered patient questions and assisted the patient with gathering belongings. The nurse then removed the IV, verified the identification, and obtained a wheelchair and had the PCA or another nurse transport the patient down for discharge. We also conducted a review of the infant discharge process and created this flowchart. The discharge orders are placed by the PEDS team between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. according to when the time the infant was born. A physical assessment must also be done, as well as provide any medications and document according to policy. The nurse must then verify that the discharge checklist was completed. The nurse must verify that the PKU was done, a car seat evaluation if necessary, the critical congenital heart defect form, the hearing screening, a social work screening, newborn screening, and then the nurse must then remove the cord clamp, review any prescriptions, as well as the summary for the immunizations, provide any educational pamphlets, and then verify that the guardian has the proper identification, verify that the car seat is available, ensure that the footprint sheet has been signed, and then remove the hugs tag from the infant to have a nurse or a PCA to transport the infant and guardian downstairs for discharge. Some barriers that were faced were having additional orders be placed after the discharge were already placed in Epic, awaiting any labs for the mother or the baby, having new staff members, a shortage of staff members, car seat availability, and transportation availability. After reviewing the discharge times for the fourth quarter in 2020, the goal was set to have the discharge time be 150 minutes. The team created a Pareto chart to identify the main contributors to the discharge delays. The following were identified as the top 3: nursing, labs, and infant readiness. The team also met with residents to create the fishbone. The following areas were identified as problems to be addressed: labs, pharmacy, communication with transportation for discharge, as well as patient education. The team then created a 5 whys. The first problem being the patient ride home is delayed. This occurred because the nurse did not communicate with the patient that they were being discharged and what time they were being discharged. The nurse did not communicate with the patient because they had not yet heard from the doctor if it was appropriate to discharge the patient. And the resident did not communicate with the nurse because they were still awaiting lab results. The following action plan was created to combat that first problem: the utilization of the Discharge Milestones Board to assist with a timely discharge. The leadership team also met with IT to create a universal way to notify all staff of the patient's discharge status. And we also met with the physicians to review criteria for the discharge process. An additional problem was that additional labs were being ordered after discharge orders had been placed. The reason behind this is that new findings were being addressed after safety rounds with the attending physician. The attending physician would conduct a deeper search and find additional problems or identify additional elevated blood pressures. And this occurred because additional blood pressures were taken after discharge orders had already been placed with an EPIC. And this was done because all staff were not notified that the patient was about to be discharged. An action plan to combat this was that discharge orders will be pended by the intern until the safety rounds have been completed with the attending physician. Nurses were also notified on how to text page regarding elevated blood pressures of higher than 140/90. Staff was also educated on mile range and elevated blood pressures and when to notify physicians. PCAs were also educated on speaking with the nurse prior to obtaining additional blood pressures if discharge orders had been placed. And we also met with IT to have a disposition button added to our SNAP board with an EPIC, which would allow all staff members to know that this patient is being discharged. An additional problem identified by our residents is that a delay occurred because the pharmacy had not been updated with an EPIC. This was done because the clinic or the triage staff did not know that they needed to place the information within EPIC for their pharmacy. And this is done because of a lack of education, and that lack of education was because the patient had not received any medications during that visit. The action plan to combat that was to educate staff to update or verify pharmacy at every visit. This included triage, clinic, L&D admission, and 3 North admission. An additional problem was that we were holding moms who are stable for discharge for other reasons. That reason could be that mom is awaiting a ride, and mom didn't call her ride because she was told that she needed to await for the infant discharge orders. And the infant is awaiting discharge orders because the infant is waiting lab results to see if the infant is ready for discharge. This storyboard was created to allow a multidisciplinary approach to facilitate a timely discharge. The nurses will use this as an educational tool to allow the mother to know what needed to be achieved prior to discharge. For this project, we were able to create the board, meet with IT, meet with our physicians, identify a criteria for discharge, educate our PCAs, as well as updating our pharmacy to help facilitate a timely discharge. Our pilot started on March 26, 2021. As you can see, our discharge times have reduced, and we are still working on improving our discharge times currently in October. Our preliminary results at the end of our completion of our Yellow Belt project showed a 23-minute decrease. Some of the lessons that we learned was a time of turnaround for project requests, the time of turnaround to see improvement, the effectiveness of huddles in education, and reinforcing new change in practice to staff regarding the discharge process. Thank you very much.